So welcome to the Daily Space Weather. Congratulations on realizing our channel exists. We've got some low levels of solar activity to talk about. Here's a sunspot-free solar disk in 94 angstroms from the Solar Dynamics Observatory. 0 sunspots. And talk about a wild fluctuation in solar activity here over the past couple of weeks, going from over 120 sunspots down to 0. Let's take a look at some more data, as 94 angstroms is pretty cool. So's colorized magnetogram, but it's cooler when there is some degree of magnetic organization on the Earth-facing portion of the solar disk. Right now, not much. There's a coronal mass ejection warning back in effect, folks. If you look at the viewpoint from Lagrangian point 5, the location of the Stereo A spacecraft, from there the Earth would be off to your right. So Stereo A looks at the sun in this perspective, which puts Earth off to its right. And here's what things look like from there. So there is a coronal mass ejection warning back in effect now. And you can expect to see an Earth vicinity coronal mass ejection in the next 24 to 36 hours. More likely in the next 24. There are filaments about to eject out of the solar corona into the greater solar system. Here's 131 angstroms. I believe the filaments are right up here, which means they could actually produce Earth-facing coronal mass ejecta. Here's 193 angstroms to show some coronal holes. Mainly in the northern hemisphere, there are some that are less visible down here as well. There's a bit of plasma between us and them, obscuring those coronal holes a little bit. We'll show you more detailed imagery of that later in the video when we show the Gong 2 data. The radio flux has dropped down to 74. The upper chromosphere and lower corona, this little area right here, produces radio frequency consistent with solar activity as a whole. So you can see the sunspot number now has dropped all the way back down to 0. And the radio flux dropped down to 74. Practically back to solar minimum conditions here on the radio flux numbers. So here's the Space Weather Enthusiast dashboard, and just to give you an idea of how many sunspots we had there, if this would have actually been drawn in, it would have been all the way up here, right about there. So there was that little recent spike in solar activity. Not expected to see anything like that until 2025 or so. And here on the Space Weather Enthusiast dashboard, you can see NOAA has upgraded its forecast for geomagnetic unrest. Some forecasted for late in the day tomorrow, September 17th, and early in the day on the 18th from a coronal mass ejection that was mismodeled. I won't harp on it. Watch yesterday's Daily Space Weather video. If you weren't aware of it, we talk about it briefly. Let's talk about seismicity briefly. There's been a lull in earthquakes for the most part over the past 24. Leave us a comment if you felt one. There were some deep quakes like this 4.1 at Fiji at over 530 kilometers depth, and this 4.3 at Philippines at over 160 kilometers depth. But no major quakes. There was a 5.3 at the Kermadec Islands. Dominica, the Dominican Republic, part of the Isle of Hispaniola, saw a 4.0 at depth. Also a 4.3 at Chile at depth, so quite a few deep quakes there. China saw a 5.4. I think that might be the largest quake of the past 24. Looks like it may be in a populated area based on the way the pager looks. Also another deep quake there at Argentina. And if there's anything we're missing from the list here, just leave us a comment. Thanks to everybody who leaves comments. Tell your friends and foes about the channel. Here's a very deep quake here at a 4.5 magnitude at nearly 500 kilometers depth, just southwest of the Kamchatka Peninsula. Are you familiar with Fagradalsfjall, the Icelandic volcano? Well, it's been producing additional lava flows as it remains somewhat active. Here's a map of the area. We'll zoom in a little bit so you can see the key and so forth. And let's check the list here at volcanodiscovery.com to see what else has been erupting over the past 24 hours. So for Gradalsfjall, if you can't say it, I don't blame you. Karimsky. Explosive activity on the Kamchatka Peninsula from the Karimsky volcano. 12,000-foot ash plume produced by that. Subanose Jima, unknown volcanic ash cloud. Semeru, exploding, producing a 13,000-foot ash plume over the Indonesian Isle of East Java. Popocatépetl. Additional strong eruptions here. 89 emissions of water vapor and gases were detected. So some violent activity there as Popocatépetl explodes. Fuego has dispersed its ash over Guatemala, fertilizing the soil. Nevado del Ruiz now back on the list, exploding in Colombia. 19,000-foot ash plume there. Revenador dispersed its ash, fertilizing Ecuador. Sabancaya intermittent emissions over Peru. And Soufriere over the island of Saint Vincent, which is part of the West Indies, has had the alert level lowered to yellow. Continuing on, to invite all of our daily space weather viewers to head to smashamash.com/smashteam. It's absolutely spectacular. And over the next coming days, for the second half of Smashtember, we're going to talk about different features. So let's start out first with the most basic feature. One of the most basic features of the Smash team is that, well, it isn't Patreon. And the way that the posts are displayed is much more convenient. It is more displayed like a blog than it is individual posts, which makes it easier to see what we've been up to. Also, we have less tiers than we had on Patreon. There are only 2 paid tiers and a free tier at smashamash.com/smashteam. So check it out. Let's take a look at some more space-based data sets. The GOES magnetometer here over the past 3 days, fairly smooth. Earth is in a South Pole current sheet. Nothing to write home about there. Those measurements from the GOES 16 and 17. Here's the current sheet. It's the Gong 2 data, part of the National Sunspot Observatory, looking at potential field surface source lines. In other words, solar magnetism. It tells us the polarity of the heliospheric current sheet, as the sun is constantly putting out mostly hydrogen nuclei, protons, charged particles that have no electron, that really want an electron. And without getting into the particle physics or chemistry of that, here's the last frame. You can see Earth is solidly in a South Pole current sheet, shown here in red. North Pole current sheets are shown in green. Fairly homogeneous sun right now. And again, descending back into quite low levels of activity. Here's the line of sight field plot from essentially from the same data here. It also shows you the solar magnetogram. Earth will remain in the South Pole current sheet for the foreseeable future. And here's your coronal hole plot showing you the sun's B field in blue. Those blue lines, those are the potential field surface source lines of the field the magnetic field that goes through the magnet, in this case the magnet being the sun. And you can see these coronal holes we talked about earlier in the video rotating in. Will they become transequatorial? Will they shrink? Will they remain stable? Leave us a comment if you have a theory on this or a hypothesis. Solar flare probability has now dropped. I would tend to agree with this, as sunspot 2866 is almost entirely out of sight. We can still see some of the plasma looping behavior associated with its magnetic fields. Solar flare warning is gone. Coronal mass ejection warning is back. Who would have guessed? GOES X-ray flux here, looking pretty flat over the past 3 days. Only one C-class intensification, that one occurring on September 14th. No solar flares since then. No spikes in the proton flux. No surprises to the channel. We would have probably forecasted it. One of our specialties is forecasting coronal mass ejections and the relativistic particles associated with them, occasionally. Next, the real-time solar wind. Pretty uneventful over the past 24 hours. Keep in mind, folks, there are a lot of suspected errors here. This yellow bar at the bottom, that means error suspect. But pretty homogeneous, pretty unremarkable solar wind here over the past 24. Current conditions are about 7.5 protons per cubic centimeter for the solar wind density. Solar wind speed only 313 kilometers per second, similar to what we'd call solar minimum conditions. The KP index, a measurement of global geomagnetism, currently only at 1. And let's take a look at the geospace as modeled by the Space Weather Modeling Framework. Here's 4 hours of data. Magnetohydrodynamic pressure in nanopascals. We show it daily on the channel, and there may be future live streams when things like legitimate coronal mass ejections or coronal holes are forecasted. Again, that's 4 hours of data. For the geospace, let's put that back to where it was there as it refreshed. Nothing to write home about there over the past 4 hours. Let's take a look at ground magnetic perturbations, changes to the Earth B field known as geospace delta B. Keep in mind this modeling of the Space Weather Modeling Framework is in nanotesla, which is magnetic flux density, not magnetohydrodynamic pressure. Not a lot of magnetic perturbations happening here with such calm conditions, a slow solar wind, and a nominal solar wind density. And if you're wondering where things are located in the solar system, this is the current layout, as all the planets except Mars are on the same side of the sun right now, which, by the way, has absolutely no effect on solar activity. If you think planetary alignments are associated with solar activity, I don't know what to tell you, except that the data doesn't back up your hypothesis. Let's advance this 1 week. There's where things will be in a week. Early in the season of autumn in the northern hemisphere there. The equinox coming up, and we'll be streaming live on YouTube for the equinox. Here's a star chart. We'd like to draw in the ecliptic, which is the yellow line, and the galactic plane, which is the blue line. And I face mine to the south. I'm currently facing the south. Which direction do you usually face while watching our videos? Let's do a brief cosmology segment. Today's random number is 373, which coincides with Centaurus X-3. This high-mass X-ray binary / massive radio source believed to be a, quote, neutron star, end quote, has quite an interesting cyclicity indeed. It only typically gets down to this level here. And over the past 16 years, we've seen it fluctuate quite a bit. There's the daily chart. And down here's the 30-day chart. You can see it's a pretty consistent X-ray source. Let's take a look at it in some wavelengths here. And here it is on the Chandra X-ray survey. The Chandra, a quite high resolution X-ray survey. Let's take a look at it in some other wavelengths here. We're just going to kind of scroll down the list. So it's a quite a bright X-ray source, as you can see here. You zoom out, you can see it's very high in X-ray output. Let's see if we can find it on some other wavelengths here. So here it is on the TESS 2-year survey. We're going to zoom way in. You can see it's not all that bright in optical wavelengths, as we regularly see with these type of high-mass X-ray binaries. Let's see if it shows up on the 2-mass. Some great imagery here from University of Massachusetts. And indeed, it does have a strong thermal signature there. That's infrared light. Located in the constellation Centaurus. Centaurus X-3, the massive X-ray binary. Entry number 373 at the Neil Gorell's Swift-Bat X-ray Observatory is our, quote, random and, quote, object of the day. And let's take a look at the astronomy picture of the day, which brings to mind hallucination, or perhaps even delusion. They claim that part of this looks like North America, and part of it looks like a pelican. I have no idea what they're talking about. Part of this region is referred to as NGC 7000, the new general catalog, entry number 7000. Part of it's also known as IC 5070, and I'm not seeing anything resembling North America or a pelican. I have no idea what this is all about. And people have been hallucinating by looking into the skies for centuries, millennia. perhaps since even before history existed. If you want to look at it yourself, it's apod.nasa.gov. Let's talk about our forum. If you want to read about our mission, cosmology falls into part of our mission. So let's go over it briefly. Our mission is to assist, study, and report on the ongoing formation of a unified theory of physics, to raise the awareness of the general public of the relationship between space weather and Earth effects, to connect and consult with media organizations to multiply our reach, to demonstrate cutting-edge proof-of-concept solutions to problems, to publish scientific papers in a multidisciplinary manner, including but not limited to sciences like spectroscopy, chemistry, astrophysics, health, wellness, longevity, cosmology, biology, magnetohydrodynamics, geology, etc. Next, to assist mankind by advancing the study of predictive phenomena in order to optimize value, reduce risk and liability, save lives and resources, and adapt no matter what the adversity is. And lastly, to not be ossified in our beliefs. Don't be ossified in your beliefs, folks. Our mission is to not be ossified in our beliefs and to treat those who are with love, respect, and inclusion to the scientific discussion. You can read more about it if you like at smashamash.com/forum/mission. And another thing to understand about the forum is that we have a section on the grand solar minimum. Let's take a brief moment to look at cosmic rays, as it's part of cosmology and part of climate science, indeed, at least according to many. Let's take a look at 7 different cosmic ray monitors. Here's the Apatity neutron monitor, and you can see it's a slight downtick here over the past 30 days. Barentsburg neutron monitor, slightly more significant downtick over the past 30 days at Barentsburg. Let's go farther south to Athens, Greece, and you can see a tiny downtick, nearly flat there at Athens. That's 30 days as well. Here's Mexico City's 30-day chart, and a tiny uptick here over the past 30 days at Mexico City. That's as far south as we'll get in terms of close to the equator. We will go to Antarctica after Oulu. So here's Oulu, Finland, quite flat over the past 30 days at Oulu. DOMB Antarctica, a slight downtick over the past 30 days, and DOMC Antarctica, a slight uptick over the past 30 days. So a little bit of inconsistency there in cosmic ray flux. And let's talk about this grand solar minimum hype. Here is 1,000 years of proxy data. Proxy data allows us to suss out the likely solar modulation, the sunspot number, and the cosmic ray flux, as determined by carbon-14 to carbon-12 isotopic ratios in wood. As when we know when a certain thing was built, we know when the wood was harvested, we know how old the wood was, and we can test it back to about 1,000 years ago because of when things like bridges were built in Europe and so forth. And we've sussed out the data here. We've got an article that we posted at smashamash.com/forum in the Heliophysics forum about the sun. Now, we could have just created a YouTube channel that did a bunch of visual analysis and aesthetically pleasing stuff about the sun, but that was insufficient in my opinion. And so we wanted to know more about this. So anyway, if you look at the current state of affairs, for example, here's your sunspot number, right? There's 100 sunspots. So keep in mind, the sun was just at this level. All right? If you look back at the previous solar maxima, how high does the sun ever get in terms of this proxy data? Just asking. I'm not making any statements or assertions at this moment, but keep in mind, this is kind of important data. So we only have sunspot numbers counted back to a certain period, and the way that we obtain likely sunspot numbers has to do with its proportionality to cosmic ray flux. When we have high cosmic ray flux, we have low sunspot number, and we have low cosmic ray flux, we have high sunspot number. Is the one causing the other one? Is it a chicken or egg argument? Well, I'm not going to go into that either. This is just a brief cosmology segment added into our daily space weather video. So if you read the thread about the grand solar minimum, without further explanation, we've placed this article on here. It's kind of important. I don't hear any of the alarmists on YouTube talking about this article. It's as if it doesn't exist, and it's because they cherry pick their data. So we don't cherry pick data, folks, on the channel. We look at all of the data, and we attempt to reach a reasonable conclusion. When we look at all the data, that's today's Cosmology segment. Make sure you check our playlists. There are hundreds more at youtube.com/smashamash/playlists. Watch all of our videos and help out our channel that way if you're unwilling to become a member of the Smash team. Charging hazards can charge up satellites. They aren't doing so at the moment. That's caused by things like protons and electrons surrounding planet Earth. Here's the one-year chart of the relativistic electrons as reported by Solon.info, and we're expecting a little uptick here in electron flux. We may reach into warning levels. We'll be letting our Smash team members know about that. If it happens, it can cause communication errors. That's the 3-day chart from the GO 16 and 17's electron flux measurements. Those are geosynchronous satellites, by the way, that measure the electron flux at the F ionosphere layer using radiography. Here's the forecast, and we're seeing this expected uptick. I would tend to agree with that uptick, as there have been a couple weak coronal hole wind streams, which are typically followed by increases in the electron flux. Here's a diagram of Earth Van Allen belts, just to remind people where things are and what we're looking at. Here's the total electron content forecast, showing us the entire electron content from a geosynchronous satellite down to your handset. And we're expecting to see fairly organized belts of electrons here, as we're just in nominal and unremarkable levels of electron flux, which tends to make the electron belts a little bit more organized. Is it a chicken or the egg argument? I really don't know, but anyway, there's the total electron content forecast. Nothing to write home about there. Here's another diagram of the atmosphere showing you where the F ionosphere layer is. It's at about 300 kilometers of altitude, and it's because we're going to show you some ionograms next. So here are your ionograms, showing you vibrational frequency in megahertz, millions of vibrations per second. We do see some low frequency anomalies here on the nighttime side and some high frequency anomalies on the daytime side. We'll show you the anomaly map next, as I'm not going to try to explain the locations of these things. I'm just going to press the latest image. There it is from 10 o'clock Universal Time. Here's the anomaly map showing you anomaly in megahertz from the 30-day median. And thanks for correcting me on medians, means, and averages, Brett. And you can see low-frequency anomalies here over the Middle East, high-frequency anomalies around the equator, around the Indian Ocean, and some low-frequency anomalies there as well. Anyway, here's the latest image in the anomaly map, and you can see some high-frequency anomalies there around places like Southeast Asia and the Central Atlantic. There's the ionogram, and there is the anomaly map. Have you been watching our meteorology segments? Were you aware that we've been doing meteorology every day as a separate video? We used to include them on the daily space weather videos, but now we've decided to separate them because, well, we're making more and more shorter videos because we want you to go view them and for them not to be too long. There's a tidbit of our meteorology segment. Thanks everybody who tunes into the videos. Congratulations on realizing our channel exists. Tell your friends and foes about the channel. Press share. Share on your social media. Otherwise, Mark Zuckerberg may not see our space weather videos. Thanks to our patrons, who have been the true source of funding for the content. Please cancel your Patreon by October 1st, as we will stop posting there and start posting exclusively to smashamash.com/smashteam. Just to reiterate, it's vastly superior to Patreon, and we're going to actually show you some stuff that only paid Smash Team members will see. So there's 3 tiers there. One of them does include a paid-up annual option, which will include some complimentary merch. If you haven't received your complimentary merch, drop us a line and tell us what you want. The only reason that we haven't sent some out is because folks have not responded and told us what they want. So let us know on that. And we're showing some information here nobody else sees. So smashamash.com/smashteam. All kinds of new stuff coming out there. The capabilities are just vastly superior to Patreon in nearly every way. It has nothing to do with Patreon's percentage. It just has to do with capabilities. So if you want to find links to that, head to smashamash.com. Smashamash.org will relocate you to this website. Welcome to the Neo Renaissance. Click the links. Check the merch. I've got some on my head right now. And I would remind all of our American viewers to, would you please, Mansa, make America not suck again? it's been sucking pretty hard, and I'm pretty sick of it. And I'm only going to put up with limited nonsense moving forward. Let's just say that. So make America not suck again, Mansa. Click our smAsho merch link. Maybe pick up a Mansa product. Tell your friends and foes it's up to them, not giant heaving bureaucracies that can't even get out of their own way, to make America not suck again. It's up to you, individual people, to unsuck the country. Also, Mensa, make Earth not suck again. Once again, it's up to you, the viewer, not giant heaving bureaucracies. It's enough to get me to wear a hat. Check it out. It's pretty sweet. Mensa, make Earth not suck again. Again, it's up to you. Corporations, governments, NGOs, and other hacks who can't get out of their own way are not going to make Earth not suck again. It's up to you. Visit our shops. Here come our bonus features, starting out with the El Teide, Spain ground-based solar observatory. Let's shrink it down one level. 0 sunspots, there are filaments, there is a coronal mass ejection warning in effect, as there appears to be one propagating quite slowly at the moment. Here's your solar intensitygram to show you 0 sunspots. Here's your solar magnetogram to show you no areas of particularly organized magnetism. And we'll close things out with a few additional images of the closest star. So here is 304 angstroms, and you can see some filaments up here. These are likely the ones that are in the process of ejecting, but don't quote me on it. Sometimes filaments are very hard to see due to contrast. 304 angstroms is ionized helium, if you're wondering. That imagery from the SDO, the Solar Dynamics Observatory. Here's a close-up of sunspot 2866 in its setting mode. Some great imagery there, along with an Earth scale, not to make you feel small, just to show you how big the sun indeed is. Don't worry, folks, the Earth is not anywhere near the sun. It's 93 million miles away. And the sun is not going to murder you. We'll close things out with a full disk view in 171 angstroms. Once again, thanks for tuning in, viewers. Congratulations on realizing our channel exists, and may that solar wind be at your back.